Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast, the podcast committed to delving into top-tier insights and strategies employed by experts to achieve success who have also written a book about it. My name is Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer here at Authors on Mission, and today we're exploring the fascinating intersection of military discipline and metaphysical wisdom from Commander Tina Erwin. Tina spent 20 years in the Navy with the submarine force before retiring and dedicating herself to teaching the living to help the dead through her extensive collection of books on spiritual topics. Her work includes The Lightworker's Guide to Everyday Karma, which presents karma not as a punishment, but as a universal energy that propels us from one moment to the next. Tina's approach combines practical guidance with profound spiritual insights, helping readers navigate everyday challenges through what she calls the physics of metaphysics. So from facing difficult conversations to understanding the deeper meaning behind illness, she offers a unique perspective on how karmic principles can transform our daily lives. I'm looking forward to diving in a little bit more about all these topics and also about the writing process with Tina today. Without further ado, Tina, welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm thrilled to be here.
And we're thrilled to have you too. You have an amazingly diverse background, really exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to diving into it. I'd love to begin by, if you could mind, sharing a little bit about yourself and what led you to writing your first book.
I wrote my first book. I had long retired by that time from the Navy, and I wrote my first book because when my niece was 6 years old, she sat on the sofa next to my sister and died right in front of my sister.
Oh.
And she said, "Mommy, I feel hot." And the next second she was dead. And the cascade traumatic effect of a sudden death was such a staggering lesson in how everyone responds to death and how peripherally friends and family and strangers respond to a person who has suffered an unimaginable loss. It's everyone's worst nightmare. And what I observed was that everyone handled it differently. And then I looked around and everyone started sharing all of their grief journeys. And so I wrote The Lightworker's Guide to Healing Grief. That was my first book in 2009. And that book was actually quite successful. Several estate planning companies actually use that book and give it to their clients when one of the main clients dies, because it really covers all the diverse elements of grief. It's not about my story with my niece's death. Mm-hmm. It's about how do you handle grief? How do you talk to a child about grief? So it was actually, and it still is, a very successful book.
Well, first off, I'm so sorry to hear that story about your niece. That honestly shocked me a little bit when I heard it. So I can only imagine like the shock that ripples through everybody else who, was in contact with that. I know it was a very difficult time. I can only imagine though how it also propelled you to start writing these books and help so many other people as well. Sometimes it does take a little bit of a traumatic experience to really, be able to share what you learned from it with others. I can see how you've done that.
I did, because I felt that if you go through a divorce, you lose your job, you're in an accident, a parent suffers a traumatic type of a mental shift. All of these are changes in your life, and so many of them are so detrimental that you have to grieve them. Mm-hmm. And you have to allow yourself to understand the grieving process and that it's exhausting, and give yourself permission to rest more and to be kinder and more patient with yourself. The book is also written from a second point of view, which is, how do you help someone who's grieving?
Right.
So that was sort of my point of view. I explained what it's like if you lose a child, or your husband dies, or your neighbor's friend her husband commits suicide. there are very specific tools that you can use to help those people or help yourself if you're in that situation. That's why I wanted that book to be out there, and I've referred people to it 1,000 times.
I'm so glad to hear that. And how has Lightworker's Guide to Everyday Karma evolved since your first release? I'm sure that there's many different layers that have been added on in this variation of the series.
Well, the Everyday Karma book was written so that actually I had written 400 blogs. And someone said, oh, you should make these a book, but you can't make 400 blogs a book. So I picked 52 of them, actually 53, and made them into a book and they were every one of these 400 blogs were all about karma. All the facets of how it applies to us in the most mundane way that we never even think about it. And people think karma is an eye for an eye and you end up blind and toothless. But it's so much more complicated than that. And so it feels like it's beyond our comprehension. But what if it's not? What if it's the most basic things? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. If you could look at it that way, then might you be more mindful when you say something or you make a decision? Because you've evaluated potentially not only the ripple effect, but the cascade effect of how your action will affect so many others. Not to paralyze you with fear, but to make you mindful of what can happen when you choose to do something.
Yeah, and I see what you mean by that, because we all should be prepared to understand the consequences that come with our actions, whether it be positive or negative. So, I definitely see where you're coming through with that. And I was looking through your book a little bit in detail here, and you describe karma as kind of having, no beginning, no ending. And you also use the metaphor of a karmic savings and loan system. So I wonder, would you mind explaining a little bit to us about that and how readers build positive interest in their karmic accounts?
Say that you have been a good person all your life. You are good, spouse or parent or neighbor or friend or coworker, and you've worked really, really hard all your life. Well, it's very difficult for all of the goodness that has been created, that's packed in that bank account, to come back to you in one life. It can come back in 1,000 ways. Well, let's say that you made a massive sacrifice. Let's take the Second World War. There are some people who made enormous sacrifices. They saved thousands of children from the death camps in Germany and during the time of the Nazis. Well, they put a staggering amount in their karmic savings and loan in their savings account. Well, how does that come back to them? Perhaps in the next life, that it will not be as difficult as that life was. Perhaps in the next life, they will have a happier life. It won't be as arduous. Now, a lot of people think that karma can come back to you if you win the lottery. But when you win the lottery, that's a really dicey situation, because that means that all of that karma comes back to you all at once. And you're drowning it. You're tidal waved with a massive change in the entire energy field of your life and how people perceive you or how people want something from you. And what they found is there are so many lottery winners who go absolutely bankrupt, because it's one of these, be very careful what you wish for, because when it comes in, you have to be ready. I'm also a feng shui practitioner, and in feng shui, good luck is being ready. There's a very interesting story of a woman who won the lottery, and she planned to win the lottery. And she had a very specific set of goals that when I win the lottery, so she created a reality. She set a karmic energy wave in motion. She actually won the lottery. And
Wow.
all the places that the money was going to go, she very carefully distributed it, and she stayed in balance. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. There's another story of another couple who won the lottery, and instantly everyone around you is jealous. But they handled it so elegantly. They stayed in the town. They stayed in their house. They sat down with the members of the small town and said, we would like to donate something to the town that would benefit everyone here, because we were fortunate, but we would like to share our good fortune. They came up with this incredible community center, and these people set aside in a trust the money to run the center and pay for a director for I don't know how many years. Everyone in the town was grateful that they won the lottery, because now it felt like everyone won it, which means that this couple created a large deposit in their karmic savings account because they shared it. There was still plenty of money for them and their family. But the more they shared, the more interesting effects came back to them. So it's a very, very interesting process. When you look at what you send out, it comes back to you. Well, if something is extremely negative and it comes back to you, sometimes that slingshot effect is really, really painful. Or people say, I'm the most unlucky person in the world. We don't know what that person's karma is from a past life, because it's carried forward. You're not born in sin and you die in sin. You're born coming in with karma. And you die and you leave with the karma you created in that life. That's a much more balanced way to look at it than you're a sinner and, bad things are going to happen to you. I mean, I know people who have died. They're the sweetest people in the world, but they wouldn't cross over because they said, well, I'm a sinner and God couldn't love me. And, when I crossed them over, I said, I can assure you that you are a lovable person. And when they saw this angel meet them, this look of joy on their face was incredible. No one leads a perfect life. That's the whole point of mortal life. So if it's not a perfect life, you're going to earn positive or negative karma based on the things you do. Not because you're going to be afraid of it, but because you're mindful of it.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much for sharing, all that information about all this. I think it's very insightful, and especially everybody listening right now should be applying this to their own lives too. I can see how everything that you do comes around and goes around. I think what really resonated with me is the story of the woman who plans to win the lottery, because I think that also seems to tie into another one of your topics that you mentioned here. Pretty much you were cautioning people about the use of this sort of thing, how you shouldn't be requesting to influence your outcomes, or it's your angelic assistance. I found the wording that you referred to it as. So does that play into the idea of planning for your own karma at all, or is that a different kind of scenario altogether?
I think it's an excellent question because it is all related. It's a very, very good question. First of all, anyone can call upon an angel to help them. It doesn't matter what your belief system is or isn't, whether you go to a church or you don't. It's irrelevant. The opportunity to request an angel to be of assistance for you is always available to every person on the planet. The difference is that earns you positive karma, and it earns the angels positive karma because they only progress by helping mortal people. So it's a synergistic effect. What you cannot do is request an angel and ask an angel to change another person. You cannot ask an angel to come in and make your husband stop being an alcoholic, or make your wife stop being a cruel mother, or influence another person's free will. An angel cannot do that. They will never. You can ask till the cows come home, but they are not allowed to do that. They cannot violate free will. If someone, for instance, is grieving and you say, I'd like to send you an angel of love and compassion to stand by you and provide comfort. You're not interfering with their free will. You're offering comfort. I wrote the Crossing Over prayer book, and it says all of these prayers that you can send to someone who is grieving or who is struggling or is going through a divorce or has had a miscarriage or something has happened to them. These are karmically correct prayers, and I use that term very carefully because they don't require any one change. You're offering spiritual assistance, and the person can choose to accept it or not. So when you start understanding spiritual parameters, changes how you see what you can and can't do, and maybe what you should and shouldn't do.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that for me. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this seems like two pretty interrelated concepts here. So I'm glad that we have that distinction now. I'd love to transition a little bit now from content into the writing process because, our audience today is really interested in, of course, improving themselves, learning about these kinds of topics, but also the writing world as well. So being that this book is structured, in a really precise way. Readers can hop into your book, consume one entry per day, per week, or just randomly. What made you choose this unique format for your book? And have you heard positive feedback from that sort of layout?
I have heard positive feedback because these topics are not necessarily related because car karma and the karma of having cancer are not necessarily related, but they're all karma.
Right.
The spiritual archaeology of the soul is a very philosophical discussion. So all of these topics, all 53 of them, are not necessarily related to each other. They have a common thread. What is the karmic balance here? But suppose you just opened the book to a day you didn't know where it was going to be, and you read that day. Maybe that might be what you needed. Maybe your higher self and your subconscious guided you to that page or that chapter. And since this came from a series of blogs that I put out once a week, they were really popular blogs. And so I just decided that some people are very methodical and very precise. I'm going to read one a day. But for other people, they like the potential randomness of it. And it gives them a freedom and a flexibility. Some people like an affirmation so that they can begin to work on their own mindset and maybe heal something in themselves. So I love writing. I love observing, and that's what a good writer does. You are an observer of human behavior. You are a student of the life process. And when you write about it, it's helping you to define it for yourself. And when you're starting to define the life process, you are now deciding, how am I going to present that in my writing style? And this is true whether you're a mystery writer or a sports writer, or you're writing spiritual work, or you're writing stories. We're all observers of the human process. And it's what makes each writer unique is the clever way we choose to present it, how our writing style elevates someone who's reading it and brings them some level of peace or enjoyment. And some writers just really have this down pat, and some writers struggle with it. But at the end of the day, we're all observing human behavior and figuring out how we want to portray it.
Right. Thank you for those tips. I really do appreciate that. And I'm noticing now a lot of this requires so much research, so much knowledge. And I know that you've been, dabbling in metaphysical topics for many, many years now, probably your whole life, as if I understand correctly. But what does the research process look like for this sort of field? Is it more subjective or experimental, or do you draw upon research that you found from other people in this field? Or how does the process look? Here's my question.
The process looks like, research is a good word, but for me, it's just the schoolhouse of life. So I've read, the books behind me and far more than that. I've read different kinds of philosophy, different kinds of spiritual traditions. And being in the Navy for 20 years, you get to see how what happens to a person in childhood affects them as an adult. Well, it's not like sailors run around and say, in my childhood, this happened. But someone who was abused or someone who had something happen, there is a timidness to their behavior. The other thing that happened to me is when I grew up, my mother was a psychiatric nurse. She worked for a variety of different psychiatrists. And she discussed every case with me for almost 10 years. So having an insight into what constitutes mental illness, character disorders, what can you heal, what can't you heal, what causes these problems for a person, what happens in childhood, and how does that echo forth and influence this person for the rest of their life. Now, some people love creating the tapestry of a medieval mystery, and some of them are fascinating. You're still observing human nature, jealousy, lust, greed, compassion, hope, and caring are all the basic elements of all the stories we've ever read. They are all throughout the Bible and through everybody else's religious tradition. I just put my slant on it. There's nothing special about me. I just put a slant on it. This was specific vignettes of how karma works so that people could bring it down to the everyday. It's Christmas and you want to be perfect, but you still have to make 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, and get ready for all these events. What is that stress like? So it's car karma. What happens if you don't take care of your car? How does that karma manifest for you? There's just so many different mundane things we don't attribute to karma. If I could convey that, maybe people would see their lives a little more clearly. That was the goal for that. And the research is simply observing people and the crazy things people do.
I see. So a lot of it seems to obviously come from, your observations, your life experiences, things you've lived through. And, I always say to listeners, you need to write about what you know and what's most close to you. And clearly this is something that, has resonated with you for many years from your own experiences with your niece, for example. So I can see how that process really does work. So for anybody listening today, if you're unsure about what to write about, think about what matters most is something we could all kind of, branch off from there. Now, I'm wondering, how has your writing process evolved between all these different books that you've written? Have they all sort of come from, this knowledge that you picked up on, or has it evolved at all through the years? What would you say?
I think I have an odd process.
Oh, please do share. We love any type of process that could help us out. Because
I would offer any other writer that one of the very first criteria is you have to love writing. Mm-hmm. Writing needs to be your happy place. It can't be, oh my gosh, I have to write a chapter today. It has to be what you get up for. It's like composers can't help it. They have to compose. So if you love writing because you're going to be helping somebody on the far end of it, that's a really great place to be. My original thoughts were I want to educate people on all of these different concepts of karma and how it works. But then I spent a lot of years crossing over the dead. I still do that. And I would always share these incredible stories with my sister and my daughter and my daughters-in-law. And finally, one of my daughters-in-law sat me down and said, "You have got to write these stories." So I wrote ghost stories from the ghost point of view. And what makes these very different is I'm weaving a story. It's a very, very radically different type of writing. I've gone from educating how something works to I'm telling you the story of 2 French girls running through the woods, terrified, and their bodies are all cut up and cuts and scratches and they're bleeding. And that's how the story opens up. What happened to these girls? Why are they running through the woods? And why have they been doing this for 300 years? Oh my gosh, they don't know they're dead. So I want the reader to just be, oh my gosh, what's happened to these children? Or, among the 3 volumes, there are 63 stories. There's 21 stories in each book. And I explain what it's like from a ghost's point of view. You're dead. Do you know you're dead? Do you not know you're dead? And I had to really work hard to change my writing style from being crystal clear about how XYZ works to being more flowery, more descriptive. And I had to write it and rewrite it and rewrite it. My daughter edited one of the stories and she said, I can tell you spent a lot of time in the Navy because you get right to the point. But I want to just slip into the story like a comfortable slipper and feel like I'm part of what's going on with that child or that man or this homeowner who can't sleep at night and is terrified every day. And they call you up and, what is it that you found? So that was a massively different writing style. And then I morphed that to the last 4 books, which teach, but then tell a story inside it. And the most recent book is Children, Psychic People, which has 70 case studies. So all 70 case studies tell a very unique story. So that's the combination of the practical aspect and the storytelling, which can be an effective mechanism. So a writer doesn't have to be limited to this is your style and this is your process. You can evolve. You can have a lot of fun with this. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and you're a clear example of that, kind of evolving as times change, as you get different feedback, as you incorporate more and more of your knowledge into it. I think it's really cool, by the way, that you have so many different stories embedded in your writing, and that only adds that credibility, like you mentioned, but also keeps the readers more engaged because they're interested, they're curious to see what's happening, and of course, they learn from it too. I'm wondering, would you mind perhaps sharing an example of one of these stories that is in the book we're focusing on today in The Lightworker's Guide to Everyday Karma?
In this book, you mentioned the chapter on cancer, which seems to be, everyone seems to know someone who has had cancer, or they've had a family member pass away because they had cancer. And what I started to observe was, and I've had private clients for over 30 years who have unusual spiritual problems. And when we gently start peeling the layers back through time, what happened in your childhood? How did this affect you? What I started to see was this chilling pattern of sexual abuse. And as the person got older, the parts of the body that were abused, sometimes it was physical abuse, sometimes it was spiritual abuse, but those injured parts when they were children didn't heal. Somehow you paper over the pain and you think you're moving forward. And I noticed that uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, abdominal cancer, all of these cancers seem to have a direct correlation to whatever abuse or trauma they suffered in this life. And in some unusual cases, they came from a past life. And sometimes we would seek that out to find out what happened in this past life that's currently influencing this life. I would advise people to never, ever let someone tell you what your past life was. Find a good therapist and do a correct regression. Don't let someone poison the well. Allow your own self to discover it. The discovery is extremely powerful. I discovered that a person who felt like they never had any voice all their life could end up with throat cancer. A person who felt like the very structure and foundation of their life was just crumbling would end up with bone cancer. So when you start looking at the metaphor of what happens to the emotional The spiritual emotional body translates into the physical body. When you study metaphysics, if you really are passionate about it, you're going to study all the sciences that God created. Math, oh my gosh, the math, the geology, the astronomy, biology, anatomy, physiology are all actually mathematical constructs. They're formulas. And the more you delve into it, you discover their frequencies. When your frequency is really, really high, the body is extremely healthy. When the frequency lowers from grief or sadness or pain or crushing defeat or loss, then that person's frequency starts to drift down. At a certain frequency, it's now possible for illness to take hold in the body. It's easy to say, oh, just raise your frequency. If it were that easy, people would do it. You kind of have to do the emotional, spiritual work to lift you out of that hole. And when you do, things start to shift. That's what that particular chapter talks about. And I've watched this happen. There's a very interesting story of a man who was told he had terminal cancer, and there was a nursery, they sell plants in town, but they had this beautiful garden arrangement. And you could walk through the gardens. You could, of course, buy the plants, but the way they did it with the fountains and the bushes, he would go there every day and he would visit with all the people and he'd talk to the children. And being surrounded by the higher frequency of plants, the beautiful music they were playing, and being involved with the lives of other people and leaving his own trauma and observing others and feeling the healing nature of nature, after a couple months, he just didn't have cancer anymore. Part of him healed, and he was surprised. I think it was, the author is, I want to say Don Campbell, wrote a book called The Mozart Effect, and the frequency of Mozart is the highest in the known world. And many people have used Mozart to heal the body, creating a higher frequency at a cellular level. And I thought his book was genius in what it shared and how it helped the world. Another amazing book is You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And at the end of the book, she looks at the metaphorical and the metaphysical cause of all different kinds of illnesses. So that element of studying, that's where the research comes in, the understanding of how all of these sciences work together, and then finding a deep and abiding connection to the divine can really lift a person up. And I guess in every single thing I write, that's the ultimate goal, is to lift the reader up and help them get to a better place. It's the service of it.
Yeah, and I can see how you do that through every example and tip in your book. And I'm assuming there's a kind of step-by-step approach that you deliver within this book as well. That being said, I'm wondering if somebody does perhaps want to learn a little bit more about these practices and, dive into it even after reading the book, how can they reach out to you? Do you offer any type of guidance if they have any questions or, do a little bit of coaching, that sort of thing?
I do coaching. I do have private clients.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I thought. So please share a little bit more about that.
I have a website, ghosthelpers.com. It's not just about ghosts, it's about all elements of metaphysics. Whether you have a psychic child and you decide they're not really possessed by the devil, or you think you have a ghost, I have services listed on ghosthelpers.com, as well as podcasts that I've done over the past are also listed there, as well as all the books. And contact at ghosthelpers.com reaches me, and I answer my email very frequently. Pretty quickly. And that's how a lot of people find me. They hear a podcast or they stumble on the book, or the thing that always freaks me out is they woke up from a dream and were told to look up one of my books.
Oh, wow.
The first time that happened, I thought that you have to be making it up. By the time it happens to you 10 or 15 times, you begin to think that maybe somebody else is helping that individual. And these books are simply mortal tools in the process.
That's a great way to picture it, right? Immortal tools in the process. Because you're right. I mean, you're laying out these tips for everybody, but they do need to be the ones to find it, put it into practice, and take it for a set of guidelines rather than just another book they're reading. It's meant to really better yourself and your interactions with others around you, and the whole nine like that.
Exactly.
So all this being said, what's next on the horizon for you? Do you have any other books that we can be on the lookout for in the future days, or perhaps any other exciting things coming up?
Well, I am continuing to do a lot of podcasts, and I'm going to start my own podcast. I've had it on and off for a while. It's just been so busy since this last book came out that I haven't quite started that. And the 10th book will be a book about healing with a very different perspective. Many, many elements go into what constitutes healing. And I think some of those perspectives might offer people a different way to look at how they can heal themselves. And also understanding the parameters of some things you cannot heal. Sometimes that person has to die and come back. And so putting that book together, and it's partly written. It's like I'm always writing something.
I like that though. You should always be writing. I always say that too. It allows you to get your ideas flowing, keep refining your writing practices, all of that. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's going to be in the works, maybe a little bit longer, but you're still dabbling at it a bit. What do you project in terms of content and word count, release date, anything like that, or is it still pretty early on?
It's pretty early on. I mean, I'm at 60 pages, and the last book was almost 100,000 words, so pretty heavy count. It's 461 pages, and that kind of wipes you out after you put that together, edited it, and uploaded it, and then done the audiobook. That was a lot, so that is a challenge. So
yeah, well, it's a very worthwhile one.
I think so. I think that the opportunity that's available now for people to publish is one of the greatest opportunities that any person has ever had. And your kind of company, other companies that help with publishing, can give people who never had a voice before a voice.
Right.
And that is a very critical thing. There's a sense of accomplishment when you publish a book. And that might be the most remarkable thing that person feels they've done their whole life. And I mean, publishing is a process. Just getting the book written is only 50%, maybe even only 40%. The rest of it it's a different, you have to have a mindset that, oh, you got your book written. Is just the beginning. It's not an ending. So it is quite the process. But every element of the process is interesting. Every element of the process lifts you up a little bit, takes you out of your comfort zone. You have to grit your teeth when you go through editing and listen to someone say, I have no idea what you just said. Why did you say it that way? Oh my gosh, if you say that, you're going to scare people. So you have to put your ego on the shelf and get yourself out of the way and really listen. I think those things can make a difference.
I love that. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And do you have any other last bits of advice for the audience that perhaps they can take home with them today as we begin to wrap up the show?
I would suggest that if you've ever considered doing an audiobook, do it. Use your own voice, because your voice is going to give your reader you. And maybe you don't have a perfect voice, but it's your voice. Your voice now makes that story, that book, even those instructions, three-dimensional. And the audiobook market is growing on an exponential level. And don't leave money on the table. You have to invest in a little equipment, but it will come back to you. And there are tools that you can use that can make a really big difference.
Well, I love that, and I think that's a really good tip. A lot of authors don't even consider making an audio version of it, but it's great that you not only did, but have found, tremendous success and relevance to it. And I agree, hearing a book from the author's actual voice does really add another layer of appreciation towards it because of all the reasons you just listed. So yeah, I mean, everybody today, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about all of Dr. Erwin's practices and techniques, you can always check out the Lightworker's Guide to Everyday Karma, along with all of her other books as well. We're going to put the links in the description box of this podcast today. And honestly, Tina, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really insightful. We're learning things that are just very eye-opening from your many years of experiences in so many different fields. So I just really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's really an honor to get to share the information. And helping other people find their voice is a really wonderful opportunity. And thank you for putting a podcast together that does give authors a voice and lets them know that you can get this done yourself and you can ask for help, but you can do it yourself. And it's a great thing to be able to do.
Yeah, and that's, remarkably true. Thank you so much for the kind words as well. To everybody listening, there's a lot to be learned from what Tina's saying here about the writing process. And also, you can take into account all of her other strategies as well as you go about, your everyday lives too. So now we have kind of a wealth of knowledge on both ends, I would say. But yeah, I mean, that being said, that, wraps up today's conversation. Again, it's been a true pleasure. And to our audience, just remember that Tina Erwin's perspective on topics, it really just teaches us moral courage, provides us with tools that you can apply immediately. And if you're a listener of this podcast, you need to remember that Authors on Mission is not just about highlighting successful authors, but empowering you with the knowledge and confidence to become an expert in your own field as well. So again, please check out the Lightworker's Guide to Everyday Karma on Amazon, on Audible. We're going to put the links in the description box today. And until next time, keep pursuing your mission with passion and purpose. Keep writing, keep leading, keep inspiring. We will see you next time on the next episode. Have a good day.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.